That is the main foundation. So come let us go hand in hand, because this is our land. Come my brother, come my sister, and let us build a nation together. This also goes for every Trinbagonian who going to live in a foreign land. Now is the time to come home and do something, instead of staying out there and freezing. Because now, more than ever, we must show discipline, tolerance, and production to build a strong and better nation. I say that is the main foundation.
Yes, indeed. Now more than ever, we must show discipline, tolerance, and production to build a better nation, because this push, this drive forward is to build a better nation, a better Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. I want to welcome you to the Dynamic Hour. Again, we have a moment in time to talk. Those on Facebook and YouTube, I want to encourage you to share the live. Sharing is caring. I want to start off this morning by saying, if you look back for the last 3 years, we have had a very successful Spice Mass. And immediately after that, the NNP and the surrogates would concoct stories, would come up with something so that the success of carnival would die or would diminish more or less what we have had during carnival. Economic activity was on the rise. Crime was on the low. A lot of our people are extremely happy with the events put on by Spice Mass and how it was organized. So the whole spin-off from Carnival is positive, good for the economy. Because the NNP, they were hoping that the economic activity would be on the down low. They were also hoping to hear a lot of bad things. But it turned out to be very good. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So as a result of a good Spice Mass, a successful Spice Mass, the opposition forces are now attacking the nurses, attacking the doctors, saying all kinds of bad things about the hospital, as though they can go to another place with a perfect healthcare system. That is the whole idea they're putting out there, that things are so bad that they can go somewhere else and get all their tests free, and the service would be 100%, and all the nurses and doctors, wherever they would go in whatever country, it would be different and it would be better. Let me tell you this. The healthcare system in Grenada is no different from many of the Caribbean islands and even internationally. They are trying every day to improve it, to enhance it, to better it. Because don't believe we have a whole pile of specialists here. And if we have specialists, don't believe they cannot go to greener pastures and be paid more. Don't confuse yourself. Also, don't believe to do a test at the hospital, everything that the doctor or medical expert would use, it's donated or it's free, and it's accessible. You can get it anytime. These things cost money. They cost money. But you see, over the many years, what the NNP did was to inculcate in the minds of their supporters and others that everything in this place is free. In fact, they went as far as to make some people believe that they can just sit down and wait on the poor relief assistance, and that will take care of them every month. So I want you to come back to reality. If you leave here, you go to the United States of America, you have to have health insurance, or you have to have your money, and it will cost you for nearly everything. Right? They are developed countries who have the resources, they have what it takes, and they can pump it into the healthcare system, and they can give you the option of public or private. I think Canada has a similar thing, but there are things that you would have to pay for. But generally speaking, Canada could, but we don't print money. We don't have to say some oil and gas company out there drilling and selling, and we don't have that. We don't have gold. We don't have silver. We don't have all the natural minerals and rare earths and all these different things that are priceless, pricey. We don't have these things. So take out in your mind that you're going to go to the hospital and everything will be free. Very soon, there will be health insurance. That will be rolled out. And you would have to, the people who could afford must be made to pay. It is simple like that. And then the people who cannot afford, they need to be educated as to what they need to eat and how they need to live generally, so that they would not end up in the hospital unnecessarily so. Preventative care. Because many a times the people who put burden on the healthcare system are those who say, well, they're poor and they're vulnerable. They don't eat properly. They don't exercise. They, you go in their house and they eat a whole pile of sugar, a whole pile of salt in their food. They eat a whole pile of starch. They're not concerned about the health. And then they put a burden on the healthcare system. Because when they go to the hospital, they want everything free. When it's not free, there are some tests that you can't get done at the hospital. And don't matter which government that comes, you will never get all the tests done at the hospital. And in no hospital in the world, you would get that. None. So this calling programs, condemning nurses, condemning doctors, having all kind of bad things to say about them, you must know that they could go to greener pastures and get more. Excuse me. You have to know that. They could leave here and go to other countries and be paid more. Because doctors and nurses are in need all over the world. Who closed down the nursing school or the TAMCC nursing school? Who closed it down? The NNP administration. They shut it down. Before a young lady or a young man in St. Patrick from a poor upbringing or family desiring to become a nurse or a doctor could have easily applied to TAMCC like any other tertiary student and get admitted and become a nurse. They would train for a number of years. I think it's 2 or 3 years, 3 years, something of that sort. Then, once they complete that course or that period, then they do the RN exam to become a registered nurse. Once they pass that exam, they become a nurse. And mind you, a good nurse too. If you speak to regional practitioners, they will tell you that nurses who come from Grenada are really good. But the NNP administration shut the thing down. So that same young man or young lady who wants to become a nurse needs to get admitted at SGU, at St. George's University. And if they don't have the money, then they would not get that opportunity. And it's not only money. If they're lucky to get a scholarship, then God bless them. So we have to understand that this problem is not something that was created in the last 2 or 3 years. No. Nope. And you need to understand there is no hospital in the world that's perfect. And you could say what you want about our healthcare system. It is not that bad. The nurses are trying. The doctors are trying. I'm not saying it's perfect. But you going on a platform or calling a radio program and screaming aloud and saying all kind of bad things about the healthcare system. And maybe you had a bad experience. But there are a lot of people who had good experiences. And when good things happen, you don't hear these people call programs and applaud the doctor or applaud the nurse. No. They are quick to condemn and criticize. But you will be condemning and criticizing forever. Because don't believe that the system gonna get to be perfect anytime in your lifetime. It's not gonna be. And don't believe you're gonna go to the hospital and you're gonna get everything free. Don't believe that. There will be medication that you have to buy. So you believe that the hospital is stocking up all medication in the world? You believe that? Something has to be wrong with you if you believe that. And then you want to get it there and it's free. I am saying no hospital, no healthcare system is perfect. The government of Grenada is trying. The nurses, they are getting $500 more on their salary. The doctors are getting $1,000 more on their salary. During the NNP time, they were not getting that. During the NNP time, they went in Canada or America and called the nurses and doctors thieves. That is how low the thing was, the morale and everything else. There was always protests and demonstration at the hospital for increase and for better this and better that. You listen to doctors, you listen to nurses, and they will tell you, with the agreement signed by government and Mount Sinai Hospital, things are improving gradually. Gradually, things are improving. So for some of these people to call programs and scream aloud, I'm not saying that it's a perfect system. No. But the nurses and doctors, they're trying. Only recently, the government of Grenada brought in some Nigerian specialists, doctors, nurses. It's a mix. I don't believe, folks, that you can just access specialists, care, and experts and so on. Don't believe that these people are in some marketplace that you could pick them up and get them to do X, Y, and Z. You speak to some of the doctors. They prefer to be in private practice than to work with government. And mind you, some of them, they have an agreement with government, where they do half for government, half private practice. Or they would do surgeries and other things at the hospital, even if it's their private thing. It's an agreement, or else they could go somewhere else and do their own thing. They could go somewhere else and do their own thing. It's simple. So there has to be some kind of intervention where our people are educated to understand certain things. You will never get everything free at the hospital. There are some things that you will have to buy or pay for. There are some tests that you would have to do privately because they have the capacity to do it. It is simple like that. And anywhere you go around the world, it is a similar thing. And don't believe that it's different from the time of NNP to now in any big way, and that during NNP time you had this and you had no. It is better now than before. But a lot of people were taught that everything is free, and they can get it free and get it free and get it free. And it's across the border. It's across the board. You look at in housing, for example, there are people who could afford to buy X and buy Y, but they still want it free from government because they believe that they're entitled to get it free from government. And you can look at other areas. This free mindset, free, everything is free. Also, you see, there are some people who cannot bring you any vote, who cannot bring you any value So sometimes that person would call the radio program and speak highly about this minister and this MP and promote this and promote that for this MP. But the individual is a bandwagonist. She was never around when the MP had to campaign to get into power. No, but he won the election and she jumped on that bandwagon. Because why? She dislikes the prime minister. She has all kind of bad things to say about the most honorable Deacon Mitchell. So she would call the program, some radio program, and speak rubbish many a times. Foolishness. And she would say, well, I have my independent this and my... But you see, there's a balancing act. There is a balancing act in this politics, in this politically charged environment. So the idiot goes on a program, criticize government, attack our beloved prime minister verbally. In fact, this morning she had all kind of stuff to say. And when she reached to the point of Project Polaris, the hospital, she then attacks Andrea St. Bernard, indirectly so. I don't know who is the person, I don't know who is this girl, and who is this. I mean, you have to understand, there is a balancing act. There are some people who cannot bring you any political value, any votes, nothing. They're more hated than like. They cannot mobilize anybody for you. They can't help you in any way. So you have to be very careful. Because while it's all cool, the person jump on the bandwagon and now pretending that they're this and they that and the NDC and they... Come on, I know the individual. This individual, right, I could tell you, used to, way back when, give some $10 towards a particular program. $10. So to leave at point A to go and collect $10 at $10, it will cost you $10 to collect it. And after a while, the person who would collect it say, look, keep your $10. Because everybody hates the individual, dislikes the individual. I'm telling you. So you have to understand it's a balancing act. Because the person, the individual, dislikes the prime minister. So she goes on and she rant and rave and it's terrible. Terrible. If you listen to the individual, certain times, you say, what is this? But it's a bandwagonist. The individual was never there campaigning and working for anybody to win anything. But NDC won the election, right? And my good pal won the election, won his seat. So the individual jumped on the bandwagon. Jump on the bandwagon because she hates the prime minister. She dislikes the prime minister. I'm telling you. So you listen to certain programs and you hear the individual with a rhetoric and you wonder. So there must be a balancing act. Must. Because the individual carries no value for government or the NDC. No value at all. Zero. The individual cannot help the NDC to get any votes or anything of that sort. It's terrible. And it has to stop. It has to stop. It has to stop. You see, there must be a balancing act. You could have your own, opinions, you could have your own positions and so on. But there comes a time when you have to balance it off. Because the individual gets profiled, right? Profiled by associating with. See? So the individual believes that, she's this and she's that and she relevant and she could pick up the phone and call and she could do, or else she's a nobody. Or else she is a nobody. So it has to be a balancing act. Because you have to understand how the politics goes and works in this place. If you ask the individual, can you persuade anybody to vote for NDC? No, the person can't. But if you listen to her rhetoric on different programs, you're going to get to know how bitter she hates the prime minister. And I'm saying that there must be a balancing act. There must be a balancing act. All right? Because politics requires discipline. You don't have to like everything. You don't have to love everything. No, but you have to understand, if you say you're supporting an individual, you need to support the individual. But don't tell me that if the individual is a part of a team, you dislike the team, you dislike the other individuals there, so you're coming down on them and you're attacking them and attacking this and attacking that. And then you go in and want to talk good about this person and that person. You see? There must be a balancing act. And you have to weigh value. Can that person bring value to anything? Because anybody could call on your behalf. Anybody could call on your behalf on any of these programs and promote what you're doing and showcase what you're doing. Anybody. So again, you see, for me, I follow different programs. And I know 99% of the people who call most of those talk show programs. And I am saying, if you listen to the rhetoric of that individual, you would think twice. All right? As any individual, anybody, the individual is more hated than liked by even people who listen to that program. All right? Folks, continuing. There seemed to be a deliberate attempt by those on the opposition side to mix up the word restriction or the term visa restriction with the term sanctions. No one was sanctioned by the United States of America. No one in Grenada, no government official in Grenada was sanctioned by the United States government. The United States of America announced that they will impose visa restrictions on government officials of Africa, Cuba, Caribbean, and specifically Grenada, Latin America. All right? 4, and you need to know why. The American government is saying, well, you know that there is an embargo on Cuba, right? So Cuba and America, they have their thing, right? But Grenada has enjoyed for decades a very good relationship, a warm and fraternal relationship with the government and people of Cuba. We can look at the airport and take it from there. So that has been there for decades. We have a lot of Grenadians who go to Cuba to study, to become doctors, to become medical practitioners for decades, hundreds of them, or maybe even thousands by now. They return home, they practice, they serve their community, they serve Grenada. There is a shortage of doctors and nurses in Grenada and many parts of the world, many countries. So there is a program that the Cuban government has in place where doctors would come from Cuba, nurses will come from Cuba, and they would work in the health system in Grenada or Brazil or Italy or Ghana or South Africa, places around the world. Because Cuba produces a lot of doctors, a lot of nurses. I mean, that's their strong point. So we have had a number of doctors, a number of nurses from Cuba in our healthcare system. What the American government is saying or alleging, they're alleging or accusing countries of paying these nurses and doctors little, but paying the government of Cuba what the nurses and doctors are supposed to get. And as a result, they're violating the embargo on all different, things that America and Cuba has, the issues there. So the government of the United States is saying, well, anybody who's associated with that, could be a doctor, it could be a nurse, it could be somebody, some government official or so, a PS, anybody who's associated with that, they're saying they would put visa restriction on them. So they could revoke their visa to go to the United States, revoke it, or they could restrict it. Maybe say only if you go into the United States for government business, then you could travel to the United States. But it's only for the United States, right? It's not sanction. Sanction is something totally different. If you're sanctioned, then you're not able to do business, you're not able to travel to certain places, this is totally different. So the opposition, they know what they are doing. So when they call a certain program or they on their platform, they're using the word sanction and sanction. But they know that's not true. They know it's visa restriction. And no individual in Grenada has been named as a person whose visa will be revoked or has visa restriction. Nobody. None. And I am saying previous governments have had Cubans here, Cuban doctors, Cuban nurses here, NNP, NDC, previous governments. So it's nothing new. We have benefited for many years by the hands of Cuban doctors and nurses. And we have benefited from the Cuban people because a lot of our people, right, went to Cuba and study. Or many of your brothers and sisters and sons and daughters and cousins and went to Cuba and study. So to make this thing into a politics, it is poor. It's of poor taste. It's bad enough, right? This has nothing to do with NNP or NDC because both governments had Cubans, doctors and nurses here working in our health system because there is shortage of doctors and nurses. This thing is simple, simple. So there is no sanction. You hear those political lunatics talking about sanction, and you wonder. But they are not patriotic. They don't love Grenada. They want bad things to befall this place. But there is a proliferation of FM stations and people have cell phones and they're free to call and say anything on any program. And there are some moderators or hosts or hostesses, they as dunce as nail head. You go only pong it until some of them cannot even read. So government put out a release. If a person calls and talking rubbish, they cannot even pull the release and read it. Some of them cannot even explain certain things. They just allow people to just call and say anything that they want to say. And many of the things that they say don't even make sense. It doesn't even make sense. They cannot even lend clarity to anything. They just yap. And look, we are living in 2025. Our people have access to information. Many of the older set of people, they may not be on social media or on the internet as frequent as, but a lot of them are accessing information. But the younger set of people, they're accessing information. They know. So you can't fool these people. So to be calling programs or pushing this agenda, making people believe it's sanction and who gets sanctioned and sanction where? Do you know the meaning of sanction versus visa restriction? I mean, it's terrible, it's sad, it's sickening, there must be some common sense on certain things. You see, this one, common sense has to prevail. Because both governments, it's not just NDC, both governments have had doctors from Cuba and nurses from Cuba in our health system serving our people. And some of the same people who call in on some of those programs, they may have been attended to by a Cuban doctor or a Cuban nurse in the past. And there are Cuban doctors and Cuban nurses in other Caribbean islands. So don't believe that Grenada is the first to be mentioned. In Europe, there are Cuban doctors and nurses. When COVID struck, who went in Italy and those places to help the healthcare system? Cuban doctors and Cuban nurses. The issue the United States has is because, you see, between the United States and Cuba, they have the embargo and other things like that in place. So they don't want any government to be paying the salaries or money for doctors and nurses directly to the Cuban government. They don't have problem in the Cuban doctors and nurses getting paid here as how the doctors and nurses are getting paid here, right? And not sending them money back home. They don't have problem with that. They just don't want the Cuban government to get it. That's the whole issue here, you know. So there are diplomatic channels. There are diplomatic channels that will be explored between the government of Grenada and the United States government to resolve this. But to have the opposition forces pushing this agenda, and it's as though they're glad. What's wrong with this donkey and them, this political donkey and them? Are you glad? That's thing to glad about? Sometimes I wonder, what is wrong with these political donkeys? That's something to glad about and to gloat about. Come on. Grenada belongs to all of us. This is our home. This is our place. And you could say what you want about the Cuban doctors and nurses. They have been helping Grenada for a lot of years. A lot of years. And we have to be grateful to them. So because the United States of America announced that they will be applying or imposing visa restrictions on government officials and their families, right? Maybe their wives or whatever. You happy about that? You're glad about that? Come on. Come on. This is Grenada. And if NNP in power, they still will be using Cuban doctors and nurses because the healthcare system requires additional doctors, additional nurses. And where would they turn to? Who would they turn to? Now the government of Grenada is exploring Nigeria to get some Nigerian, well, they got some Nigerian specialist nurses and doctors. But it's not easy. The healthcare system, anywhere around the world, they need more nurses, more doctors, and so on. And the government of Grenada and the government of the United States, they have good relationship. They may not agree on everything, but they have a good relationship. So I am saying the opposition forces gloating and laughing and clapping and singing hallelujah about this. And mind you, not one individual in Grenada has been named as having visa restriction or the visa revoked. Not one Grenadian. So to jump on this thing and make this thing sound as though, and that is why I featured the piece by this political lunatic who's on some platform pushing the NNP agenda as a spokesperson for them, talking about Mount Sinai and Mount Sinai Hospital and so on. And the guy is a political lunatic. Mount Sinai Hospital, that's a private entity. They signed an agreement with the government of Grenada to work on improving our healthcare system. It would not happen overnight, gradually, but Mount Sinai Hospital, that's one of the best in the world. One of the best in the world. So it's a good thing. They already start seeing improvements. But everything would not happen overnight. And then you have the new hospital, the new medical village and city. That's a good thing. That's good. Nothing wrong with that. But you have an opposition party and our parties. It's as though they lost their way and their senses. They're grabbing at straw. They're so desperate, and all they want is power. All they want is to get back in power. You ask them, where are your plans? They have no plans. Where are your programs? Where are your initiatives? Where would the resources come? They have nothing. Nothing. All they want is power. Give them a mic, they go on a platform, and they start braying like some jack donkey. That's all they're good for. But they've been in power for 20-something years. 20-something years. But look at the condition of the roads. They're still very small. You have 60-something thousand vehicles in Grenada. They tell them about the hospital built in the sea, almost to the sea, because it will cause corrosion and rusting and all them things. They still build it there. NNP and many of those opposition forces, they backward, they dunce, they dumb, they stupid politically, That's why they where they are. But all they want is power. Power. Huh? You had power for 23 years and a half. What did you do with it? What difference did you make or made? What difference you made in this country? You tell me. I want to know. Because the NDC has to come down and fix every damn thing in this place. And then your supporters believe that they could fix it overnight, so they must do everything now. But you had 23 years and a half to do it and to fix it. You didn't fix it. But you see, the NNP surrogates and pundits, they are playing on the vulnerability of the NNP supporters. The majority of NNP supporters cannot read, cannot write, and cannot reason. Let me repeat that. The majority of NNP supporters cannot read, cannot write, and cannot reason. And they consider themselves to be poor and vulnerable. And their children gets caught up in that web, and their children. And if you go around Grenada and you check it out, the NNP kept their supporters poor and vulnerable for a lot of years. Because when you're poor and you're vulnerable, you're dependent, you suck the politician foot for everything, and it's terrible. You look at the condition that they live in and so on. They kept them in that position. And every election they run and vote for them. But they have never gone up the strata, the ladder. They have never improved. The NNP left 8,000 plus people using pit latrines, and the NDC now has to come and take them out of pit latrines and give them flushable toilets. And some of them still don't appreciate that. They love when the rain falling and they go on the pit latrine and he go and he splash up on them. Because if you use this thing, the water, the rain, because it's a cut back drum that they put in this thing, so the water still fools up that stuff. They love that. The NDC is trying to give them some dignity and the majority of these people are NNP. The pit latriners, they're NNP, the majority of them. NDC trying to help these people to come out of that state. But some of them don't even appreciate it. I'm telling you, they don't appreciate it. It will take a long time for that to happen. But that is the reality that we face in this country. To unlearn some of these NNP supporters and then to learn them, to educate them, it will be a hard task. Very, very hard task. Don't believe that you can change them overnight. You can help them to see the light overnight, Sometimes it takes a while to get that thing out of them. It takes a while to get that thing out of them because they are still stuck. You meet some of them and you say, but come on, you've been supporting NNP all that time and that's where you're staying? That's the condition that you're living in? You and your children? You and your family? All those years you're running behind NNP? That's where you're staying? That's the condition that you're living in? And then the NDC rolls in and they fix the road, they fix the drains, they fix the police station, they fix the healthcare center, the medical station or health center, they fix the school, they fix the community center. They do all of these things. They fix the playing field, they fix the hard court or the basketball court or tennis court. They do all of these things. And mind you, it is not an easy thing for these same people to appreciate the NDC administration, even if they do all of these things in that area. Yeah. Because for some people, all they need is a $50 in their hand, But if you're giving them a walk, they don't want it. Just give them a $50 or rum or a beer. They become your best friend, but for a purpose, because they want more. But you give them an opportunity. Tell them that you would give them a job, right? Or you would get their child to TAM, CC, or NULO to learn something, to better themselves, or a scholarship to break that cycle of illiteracy and poverty. They don't want that. A lot of them. So it will take a long time to change the mind because the battle is in the mind, That's where the battle lies, in the mind, the mindset. The mindset. To change that, it will require a hammer and a leg. That's where the battle is. It's not just a physical thing. But I am saying we have to still try to educate our people, to liberate our people through education. The enslaved mindset is still there. It's not just shackle and chain and, no, it's more than that. So the government continues to try, and we have to support them. We have to support them. So the opposition forces, they're desperate for power, and they don't care if Grenada is flat on its face. They don't care. Just negative, 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 negative. That's all they want. Bad news. So right now they hopping on the healthcare system and hopping on the hospital, attacking the nurses and attacking the doctors, the opposition forces. And they hopping on this announcement by the State Department and the United States of America. They hopping on that. Because why? All they want is bad news, bad things. That's what they want. They don't want good for Grenada, Carrick, and Petit Martinique. Nope. But they must know that there are more Grenadians now who are smarter, who are more intelligent, who are more current, following current affairs, and who understand things, who are seeing things. And that is why we have more people coming to Grenada, visiting Grenada for carnival and other events. Excuse me. More people are coming back home to build. More people are investing in Grenada. More opportunities are available. Grenada is more peaceful. So no matter how the opposition forces try, they're not succeeding. they're not succeeding. Because Grenadians done with Keith Mitchell and the NNP and all of them, you know. The opposition, I don't, Emlyn Perry, well, they're even talking about she. Right? Grenadians done with them. And if they don't know that, somebody needs to tell them that. Grenadians home and abroad, done with them completely. And if you believe they get a cut ass in the last election, wait for the one that's coming up. If you believe they got a good cut ass in the last election, had gone there, because they thought they were going to win it, wait for the one that's coming up. And you're going to see. It will be like a movie. Grenadians home and abroad, tired with NNP and Keith Mitchell and all of them old rejects, political derelicts. People don't want to be around them and associate with them. No, we are moving forward as a country and as a nation. And we have to remain focused. So, folks, I want to wish you all the best. Have a wonderful Friday, a wonderful weekend. I'll be back with you on Monday, God's willing. On Monday, God's willing. All right? So I decided to come back on before for the 2 days, Thursday and Friday. So I'll be back on in normal fashion on Monday, God's willing. Folks, take good care and bye for now.